My name is Chris Pitti. I'm going to be your moderator. This is about influencer marketing in Ghana, and we would like to know how it works. And if you're an influencer, for example, what you need to do, how do you build up your profile? If you're a brand, for example, how do you manage influencers? Is it fair what you pay them, and so on? You are a brand, you hire an influencer. Who should listen to who? Considering that the influencer knows its audience and the brand, knows exactly what it is that the brand feels like and manifests like, so who should listen to who? Should the influencer be given free, just the green light to do whatever it is that they want? What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Derek?
Yeah, it's actually every brand person's dilemma, right? When it comes to who should you listen to? Should brand lead or should the influencer lead? But I always tell young marketeers and even my peers that before you choose an influencer, you need to understand what the brand is and what the brand positioning is. What I see mostly happen is that we see an influencer, we're all hyped up because this influencer has this number of stars on social media or digital and influence. We want to go with that particular influencer. So there are a few steps that I take, and then once I unpack this, I believe that we should be able to know what the answer is, right? The first one is, who is the brand? What does it stand for? Who's your target demography? Once you as a brand person have been able to identify these traits of the brand, then it sort of shapes who you choose as an influencer. That's the first one. The second one has to do with is what's the objective? So I might be a brand that is old. However, I want to recruit new users into my repertoire. It means that I need to look beyond the brand and look at the reframe of the objective of the campaign that I want to run. The third part is, what's the college of influencers that I want to use, right? Is it a mega influencer? Is it a micro influencer? Or is it a nano influencer strategy? Because all have a role to play as to who I listen to or how we go about it. But I think the reframe that we've gotten in the current dispensation is around how influencers are able to speak to their consumers and allow them to take action, right? And so a fine balance of what the objectives are, who the segment of influencers are, and what you want to achieve plays an important role. And so the part I see of getting the most value out of an influencer is when it feels natural and when it feels unscripted, versus when you want to go with an influencer that you want to dictate to. So content creation and co-creation is key in allowing us to get the best out of the value. So if I'm working with a bunch of nano influencers, right? These are influencers below 5,000 followers. And what I want to drive is engagement. And so I would want to drive the engagement around key topics or key reframes within the brand context. And so I would want to dictate the pace that they go and some of the topics that they would want to bring. However, in deploying this, I would want to understand how they communicate to their target audience and fuse it in. So it's going to be a hybrid. If I go to a macro influencer level, where I'm looking for a hybrid of I want to engage and I want to drive reach, right? And so I would be going for, look, just post this for me. I want you to be able to drive this and create this bespoke content that is unique to your audience to allow us to connect. For macro mega influencers, right, is always around, first of all, tapping into their massive reach and influence. And so if I'm looking for a rich medium that I want to just inform people about, I'll go with them. However, the bridge that crosses the two is, how do you extend your campaign beyond the influencer, right? And so if you get an influencer or an influencer that has latitude to be able to drive a commercial for you or be able to drive a key passion point for your audience, then you would want to co-create. So for me, as a brand person, right, the brand is usually central to it because the brand has an identity, it has a reputation to guide, but it's just around a hybrid, but brand would lead and influencers will follow.
Okay, so I would approach it like this with a base question: why are we here? If a brand approached an influencer to do certain engagement, there are 2 or 3 things that would have happened. We would have actually done a little bit of an analytics of the influencer's reach, who understood what their audience are and what kind of connective tissue their content brings to the what's called it, can happen or can be established between the brand and the audience. But when you get to that point, this is where the dilemma. I'm just coming off a campaign actually where we had this challenge. We approached the influencer because they were doing something right. What tends to happen from a brand perspective is obviously every brand has an attribute, every brand has a positioning, and therefore we try to fit somebody that exists in a quote unquote boundaryless world into boundaries, yet we want to tap into their boundaryless energies. There should always be a trade-off. And the trade-off part is we need to be able to allow the influencer a degree of latitude to deliver the content, or it's inauthentic and it becomes any other branded content piece that is out there. And that's where brand starts to lose money or it becomes a very foolish partnership. But at the same time, influencers also, knowing that you are going for a commercial relationship with a brand, there are rules to this game. You cannot, and we, like I said, I just coming off a campaign for a client, and it's a food brand, it's a biscuit brand, and we engage an influencer and said, there's a way to handle food. I'm not saying treat the biscuit like it's caviar, but I'm just saying that you cannot put the food on the ground and be stomping on the food and playing with it. In your non-commercial, non-aligned opening space or boundaryless space, you could probably do that and get away with it and your audience will have a laugh. But once it's supposed to deliver a certain value to the brand, there's a way to handle the pack. You're supposed to position the brand in a certain way. There's a part of the pack that needs to show the camera. Also, that's the connective tissue that we want to engage your audience. I mean, 1 or 2, everybody almost nailed it. But then you got to one person who was like, nah, my audience know me to be this. I'm like, I understand you. But here's the thing. There are parameters with this commercial engagement. And therefore, we both need to drop something. I mean, in the end, we made it all work beautifully between the two. But the point is, there's always a trade-off. And that trade-off needs to be agreed from the start. And so, for me, it always comes to the table with, where's my checklist of do's and don'ts in this engagement that we're about to do? What can be said? What cannot be said? What can you tag me with? What can you not tag me with? I'm not saying, there's free speech still existing in the digital age, but at the end of the day, there's a cost to speech, whether free or not. So if there's a cost to speech, whether free or not, we must both find ourselves in a certain space where the trade-off is for the brand and then it's good for the influencer and authentically their audience also accept it. Otherwise, it's a wasted venture on both sides.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Hey, guys, we're very happy. Nanaba just joined. Thank you so much for making time. We were worried. We needed our influencer part of the conversation. I mean, because it was going to be unfair. Brands were going to say whatever it is that they want to say. And no one was actually has the voice of the influencer. How are you today?
I'm very well. It's good to join.
Yeah, we're great. We're actually excited to have you here. I'm going to, because we started before you, without you, there's one question that I think you need to pick up on. And the brands have spoken, and even the agency has spoken, but it's really a question about who do we listen to when there's a campaign? A brand calls you, you sign a contract, you're supposed to work on a campaign. So who listens to who? Who does what? Does the influencer choose how they speak to their audience? Or should the brand dictate every single move? What are your thoughts on that from an influencer point of view?
Right. So from my experience, and I don't know about other influencers, but I noticed that for the kind of following that I have, they prefer to hear from a Nanaba kind of style point of view. So I've engaged brands who will send me a text that I sometimes find very rigid, and it's also execute such lines. They are so stiff and when I post those, the engagement are really low as opposed to when I go with my style, I still communicate the same idea the brand or the agency wants me to communicate. So I noticed that it's more organic, more when I put it where, but still communicate the same message. And a lot of the time, our brands will send they want you to use the exact words is their name. And I think it's really rigid from the beginning. I tell them, look, if you want influence for your brand, you need to give me some room to be myself, because my following love me because I am myself. But if you put me in a box, and usually they have about 3-4 influencers, and the same to all of us, and all three of us are sounding the same. And for me, it's robotic. I really don't know. And so sometimes they don't understand, but when people communicate the same message, they realize that the engagement is higher. People enjoy it than what they want me to do. You know, from
Indeed. So if I understand correctly, you feel that you need, as an influencer, it's very important for you to keep your authenticity, because your audience loves you because you speak a certain way, you behave a certain way, and having a brand choreograph every single move could make the brand really lose out on on a lot of things, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. So guys, I told you we needed the influencer. I told you, the conversation was not complete because you guys were just saying, whatever it is that you want to say. So we want to talk about something really important, really, really important. Do you think when it comes to rates in Ghana, do you think it's fair? Do you think influencers are paid fairly by brands? And then how can one justify their rates? Is it years of experience? Is it brands that decide to pay for exclusivity should pay a lot more? Is it the demand that the influencer has? Is it the reach? Is it the engagement? Is it the proof of conversion? Like when you go to a brand, you tell them, listen, here's my last assignment. This is how I've converted. So you pay me top dollar. So I'd like to speak to the influencer again first.
Well, interesting. Okay, so many a time you have it's the agency that will contact you and they tell you that this is the budget, this is what we want to do. 4 times we do this, do that, and that's how much we are paying you. And sometimes I look at the amount you're paying, and I don't have the luxury to accept what they offer because it's way below what I think paying. And they do bully influencers. Well, not me, but they do bully a lot of influencers. I don't have a rate card per se. So this was how much I was charging them. That if you really, and the thing is, I quoted that figure because I didn't want to use an Android, and I knew from all the things that I had said about Android in the past, my followers on Twitter especially were going to come at me and say, oh, so you can even use an Android of all the things you said about Android and iOS in the past. But eventually one of them said, okay, this is what we're going to give you, blah, 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 blah. The money was not good enough, but I gave them a CSR project. But if you really want me to do it, and this is how much you want to pay, then I need you to do this project for the mental hospital. And if you're ready to fund that project at the mental hospital, I'll use the Android phone. And they accepted to do it. In this case, the agency was insisting that no, what she's charging is too much. Her demands are too much. I don't think we should do it. We'll give you influencer A, B. They can do the same thing. But in this case, the brand wanted me. So the brand went behind the agency and negotiated with me. And it worked. So sometimes the agencies are a problem. Rudy. Yeah.
Actually, thank you very much for this. I'm going to try to do it differently. Instead of, inciting a fight here, I'll go to Nelson because Nelson sits between the agency and the influencer. because they have a platform. So Nelson, what do you think is fair for a brand? How should a brand proceed to decide what is fair to pay an influencer? You know, you work with agencies, you work with influencers, and across many markets.
So for us, it's a really different model. We do not have red cards as such, but what we do is, our platform is an AI-driven platform. So we conduct psychographic analysis, behavioral analysis. Just give me a moment. So we conduct we gain really deep insights into both audiences and potential influencers. And part of the test that we do is just to analyze what kind of incentives would actually impact these influencers. It could be a product, it could be cash, but based on what we analyze them to understand their needs, their psychographics, their interests, activities, their likes, we are able to put together a package which will really fit or be very attractive to them when you're approaching them with jobs. So we don't have a one size fits all kind of remuneration process. So that is different.
Thank you. I'd like to talk to Mr. Derry, because Mr. Derry pays a lot of influencers, so you spend a lot of money paying influencers. So yes, please tell us, what do you think? Do you think, just in Ghana, do you think people are paid fairly? Or do you think, of course, you will not admit that you're underpaying, in case you're underpaying, but do you think you're paid fairly?
So for me, I like to see influencers as a brand, right? And just as Nanaba would not want to use an Android, would want to badge with an iPhone. And so the way we approach influencers, just as Nelson said, from a Diageo perspective, is very metric based, right? What's the reach? What's the engagement? What are the insights that we are driving? And for me, the net goal is, are we able to cause a behavioral shift? So what I see is that most influencers in the market have not been able to cultivate themselves as a brand. They don't see it as a business. To some of them, it comes as, oops, I'm on media, right? And I've had this number of following, building it because I took a first mover advantage onto social media. Hence, if brands want me to do something, I would hang on it. Nanaba is here, right? And I've followed her on the side for a while, and she's been able to move from brand influencer marketing to behavioral support marketing in terms of her personality as an influencer. So if you look at her last year, she's gone down the trodden to DE consumers, which most influencers are not doing, and building her base from that. So if I look at my LSMs or socioeconomic classifications of consumers, the ABs are strong, but an influencer that gives me breadth and that allows people to drive that aspiration is there. And so if you build yourself as a brand and you're able to meet the brand objectives in terms of reach, engagement, and that appeal, why do we need influencers as brands, right? We need them because we want them to influence and change the behavior. And so I would say from where I sit, as far back as 2015, we're paying good money for influencers that came to the table. And we've seen some significant changes. In 2015, we ran the Made of Black campaign, which saw us sign EL. We had Reggie Rackstone and we had Shatta Wale. And we're looking to drive some sales for the younger consumers. We went into them, we paid the money, amidst the reservations. However, we're able to get the results. So from where I sit as a brand person, once I am guaranteed and satisfied that the person I am engaging or the influencer I'm engaging sees themselves as a brand, knows their value, and are able to drive and work within the various ethics, I think we pay them what we need to do.
I would like to find out, and because this is really, really key, really key. Brands are really struggling with that. And Samuel actually touched on that a little bit. How do you really choose an influencer? Because And the reason why I'm asking you that is, you get an influencer today, you look at their presence online, they're great. But then the influencer goes to the club and punches somebody in the face. Or they get drunk and then they get into and they always do that, So all of a sudden you have a contract with them, but then now you're in problems, So how do you, Mr. Kwachi, what do you think? What would be is there a method to choosing an influencer for the right influencer for the right brand?
Okay. Great, there is. Before that, I want to use 20 seconds to touch on the payment parts, because Nana made a comment. Look, it's like anything. When you're negotiating your salary, when you're getting engagement, there's always a band. But when it comes to negotiations, it's basically your part to negotiate what you think you deserve. Some people get away with it, some people don't. Because influence in itself is amorphous. There are a few attributes to look at. Where is reach? What niche are they great at? When I was making my post about Nanaba, I said a few things. Multi-platform influence is actually her power, because she was influencing us on TV direct. She was influencing us on radio, and Nanaba appears on a radio show, and I see a blip in the growth. There's some strategic sessions. She goes to the morning show, changes. We tracked all of that. And then there's obviously her engagement on social. So when it comes to her, you already know you have to bring 2 checkbooks before you start a conversation. But let's not get it twisted. Somebody who has 1 million followers on social media and thinks that I should be able to equally get to the level of Nana, there's a formula to this. I'm looking at your reach. As for presence is the easiest one. In fact, likes are vanity right now. And in the era of bots, and Nelson's platforms, well, there are people who work opposite of Nelson and make sure that they can stack up the numbers. So suddenly I wake up and this person has 100,000 followers. Who are the followers? It's just bots that are sitting there. So what's the conversion rate on a single post? That's the first thing we measure. The person has 100,000 people. When they post, you are seeing 50 responses, and they are just likes and just a single comment. The level of influence on that 100,000 may be weaker, or that 100,000 is not being connected, or her content is wrong. So all of these things, you tick the boxes before you get there. The part where we used to look at the fame and the size of the talent or the influencer, it's long gone. If you can't convert, there's really no conversation we can have, because we've stripped the whole thing mystery on. Oh, their person is on TV. The TV station is big, so therefore they must be influential. No, the person is on social. She got 1 million, and she will get you 100,000 responses. That's what I measure. So we look at all of these things, your conversion rate, before we make a choice on what to. And again, it's not cast in stone. Look, I came off. There was an influencer. We checked we did analytics, like a profile. We came back, and when we started to engage, immediately told us that, hey, I've just lost my Facebook page, and it's a hack. We're working with Facebook to get it back, but immediately they started, and I think they have about 250,000 followers on that page. But immediately within 3 days of launching a new Facebook page, while he works on that, he got 30,000 responses back. He got 30,000 likes. But we have already shown the clients that we're going with this influencer who's 250,000 audience. But I made an explanation that, look at his rate of growth over the last few days when he launched the new page. People followed him to that page. And if he can grow at that same pace, he'll probably be back to his 250,000 in no time. But that's not what we need. We need him to convert 30-40% of that 30,000 people to the campaign that we're doing, and would have been a success. So again, the fee was not reduced. The whole conversation still, we went with a smaller audience as opposed to what we actually paid, but delivered the results. So I think there's we have to, the jury is out there in writing what formula looks like, but it's a conversation. When I sit on a table with Nanaba to do a conversation on influence, it's going to be a totally different way of measuring, way of engaging, as against any other influencer because her attributes and the value that she brings to the table cuts across that. And then the other thing you said about what the challenges you may have engaging an influencer, it's like your worker. You hire a guy, his CV is great. He's supposed to come and change your business overnight. He gets in there and he's an ass. What do? You fire them. It's the same thing you have to do with your influencer. There's a contract, there's a guidepost, there's a whole checklist of things that we need to agree to. When they go out of it, please pull the clause and let's end this thing.
I really like this because I want to go back to Nana again because so Nana, you're an influencer, so you're a brand influencer. You get a contract and you start doing the job. Everybody has a bad day, you know. I mean, it happens, you know. I've gone through your profile. I don't think you're the kind of influencer that would get some deal and then, you know, we find you drunk on a table in a club and you know, I don't think you're at that level. But do you think it's fair though, you know, because influencers have a bad day, and especially when it comes to younger, much younger influencers, you know, so they make a little mistake. Do you think it's fair for the brand to actually just necessarily, you know, as Rudy was saying, to actually just cancel the contract? And then what happens? You know, the contract is signed. So what can the brand do at that point? What advice do you have for them?
Well, I think that number one, if you set out to be an influencer, you need to be responsible in your dealings, in your utterances. You decide, you have to choose the place you want to go. So for instance, I know young influencers got some contracts, and at some point, two of them came to my office to talk to a certain brand because they noticed later that they had said certain things about some personalities and a competitor brand in the past that were really, really bad, like really, really bad. They were trolling them, and it was very bad. So this brand decided that we don't think we want to go ahead with this contract with you. I think the brand didn't do due diligence from the beginning because they should have known all of that before signing the contract with them. But if you take it upon yourself, an influencer, there are do's and don'ts. Yes, you will have a bad day. I do have a bad day. Sometimes I get so busy, I get so overwhelmed that I forget that I promised a brand that I was going to post at 9 p.m. and goes into the next day, and they'll send me sometimes a statement. I promise this, you haven't done it. It does happen. Yes, you won't see me drunk anywhere. I'm imagining myself drunk actually. But you won't see me drunk anywhere. But you do have a bad day. You really do have a bad day. A typical example, and you know, Samuel is here. I remember when they were doing the Made of Black campaign. It was a very exciting campaign, and I remember running into one of their branding partners, and he had ordered Guinness, and there was another brand on the table. And then I went to him and I said, "Look, aren't you influencing for Guinness? You can't have that other brand there because it's a competing brand. So take it off the table before you even post the video, because you could lose your contract with Guinness." And it wasn't deliberate. You know, the guy wasn't even thinking. He didn't see it. It was his friend who had ordered the other bottle, and it wasn't for him. So if I hadn't alerted him, I'd have run into problems with Guinness, maybe, because I didn't know what his contract was. But you do have instances where you just find yourself forgetting that, okay, I have to do A, B, C, D. I'm being irresponsible here. But I think sometimes the brands should also understand that we are human beings. I sometimes forget that I have a Twitter following, and I will go and post some nonsense on Twitter, and someone will say, "Oh, no, but I think that was unnecessary." And then I'll immediately go back and delete it because I have a different following on Twitter. I have a completely different following on Instagram. So the things I put on Instagram, I will not put on Twitter. But some of the things I put on Twitter are sometimes very interesting, you know, but I forget sometimes that, yes, my influence, people are looking up to me. So I need to be very responsible in what I put out there. So we do have an off day, and the brand should understand. But I think that as an influencer, there should be guidelines. You should manage your position very well. You don't want to run into trouble with the brands, because the brands have an image to protect. And I completely understand the brands, because if you're looking at Guinness, for instance, a global brand, they spend so much money on branding, they spend so much money on marketing. They have a huge brand. So an influencer with 1 million followers cannot bring the brand down. So I do understand the brand sometimes, but I feel they should sometimes understand that, because even Samuel sometimes has a bad day.
All right, thank you for this. Someone like Nelson, for example, would tell you that his platform allows you to actually, because they don't only look at the number of followers or the engagement, but they go through on the internet, and they use AI to actually really mine a lot of data, and they see a lot of different things that you do. So while choosing an influencer, it's really without a really good tool, it makes it a little bit difficult. Nelson, am I correct?
Yeah. So this is a fight I get into with a lot of influencers, because I always say that influencing is not a job. Influencing is an outcome. So what that means is that, the platform, and if you look at how a platform works and how it identifies influencers, and I like what Rudy said about, gone are the days of when public figures and celebrities were influencers, because people see right through them nowadays. What brands are doing is that a lot of brand managers have become very lazy, and sort of use the same pool of influencers to do the same things. So, and this is why I think when Nana was talking about this particular brand already knows or didn't know that she loves iPhones, but they are bringing an Android for her to, take out to the audience. But the audience already knows that she loves iPhone, so they'll block anything that she'll say about it, so she will not be authentic. So what our platform is able to do is to look at, first of all, how we do our approach is go to the target audience first, understand the target audience, run psychographics, behavioral analysis, sentiment analysis, just to gain deeper insights to know what are the actual needs of this target audience. What can we give them? How can we drive a campaign with mechanics which are really targeted to these guys? And then once we understand that, we actually extract influencers who have an impact to this target audience. And you'll find that our platform is able to give you TV kind of scale, as in it can give you a huge reach, but very optimized because it's very targeted. So we'll get about even 5,000 influencers. And we are able to manage 5,000 influencers because of our platform. I think right now we have one campaign which has 6,000 influencers, which is running across two countries. So you'll find that most of these guys who are influencers have never influenced before, but the platform has looked at them, and we do three things. Just like Rudy was going through, there are three things when we look at that when we're identifying influencers. Number one is brand affinity. It's easier for a brand, someone who loves a particular brand, to sell it to the next person, right? And then the second thing is emotional connection with the target audience. We are able to measure the emotional connection between the influencer and the audience. We already know the audience is the target audience because we drew them out of that target audience. And then number three is brand security. What you're talking about, for our platform would have easily recognized that, Nana uses iPhones and she talks about iPhones a lot, and she hates on, Androids, and will cross her out because of brand security, because there's that sort of conflict of interest. And then we have the thing about, we're able to look at a scandalous past and to see what have you done in the past that can be injurious to this particular brand. And then also just studying your psychographics, we know something which can set you off, as in, can this person get easily pissed off, and what are the triggers that could get this person pissed off? So we're able to really know who is a safe influencer to use for a particular brand, who has an affinity to the brand, who has the emotional connection with the audience, and can, with that, we're able even to tell the efficacy of the campaign. We're able to predict and say, at the end of the campaign, we expect to reach these numbers, convert these numbers, and even to 95 to 98% accuracy based on our previous campaigns.
In a market like Kenya, for example, influencers have started using their Insta stories as advertising boards. So, and then the influencer then posts a lot of stories then during that day, instead of necessarily getting one assignment and then posting that day, they have a lot of stories, and then they acknowledge a lot of small little businesses. So do you think, Samuel, do you think that's something that would be viable for the Ghanaian market?
I think within the digital landscape, there's always innovation every day coming in. However, it's always back to the core and principles, right? Looking at channels in isolation doesn't drive a lot of maximization, right? And so with this, I'll be looking to the like of Rudy and Nelson, just to sort of understand what does it mean, what skill do I get, and what is the comparative advantage versus the traditional digital innovations that are coming up. And so I'll not discard it as a model that is not viable. However, what I would say it would be one that I'll be looking at some sort of insights and metrics around it to be able to make an informed decision. But I've seen it, and then it comes back to the last part that Nelson spoke about, right? It's around brand security. And so as brand custodians, we usually shy away from connecting with influencers directly. We usually would do that through an agency just because we want to be able to moderate and have all those background checks done. And so that's my viewpoint. So it's something that I've seen pull through. It's innovative, even over and outside Ghana, but it's one that we would need our agencies to sort of just bring us up to the speed and then stress test it for us to be able to use.
My question then is, if you had a solid tool, right, would you really need an agency? I'm really sorry, Mr. Kwachi, to put you on the spot like this, but for me, it's really about value to the audience. So do you, Samuel, do you think if you had a very powerful tool, would you still, that did all the analytics and everything you need to know, about the influencer and gave you a 360 view of the influencer, would you really need to have an agency while you're choosing the influencer, or are you using the agency just for the payment? Because the influencer doesn't have to come and bother you, and ask you for their money. They can actually. So what do you think?
So I think it's a double-edged one, right? I love the tools because they're able to give you social listening. They're able to give you all the analytics, right? But there's usually a voice behind the brand. And for me, moderation is key, right? The other part is that most of the agencies that we've worked with, including the likes of Rudy, have relationships that spans for a long time that allows us to drive some value. And so increasingly, if I am looking at a nano macro influencer, the platforms are really great to be able to get through to them. However, if I'm looking at a mega influencer that have multiple legs beyond and over digital, then I believe that it's very important that you combine the tools that we get, like the AI influence or affluence, plus that of the agency, because the insights allows us as brands to be able to drive the ROIs and the KPIs that we want to achieve. So that's my viewpoint.
Let me make it a case for us. It's about which muscle you want to train. At the end of the day, look at it from this point. Derry has a number of SKUs he's managing within his portfolio. Each one has to engage influencers in an authentic way to deliver. The capacity to have a powerful tool, sit through, analyze, come back with a campaign, build copy, send it back, do a checklist, send it back to his influencer, and guide it. It's a lot of work. If you can afford it, bring it in-house. But the thing is it's not just this process. Because if I tap into and came back with analytics, you still need, it's me like consulting the Oracle. You need an interpreter for that, right? That's what the agency is for. We interpret what the Oracle tells us to you, the client. And the thing is it a value relationship? Even some influencers actually are starting to get attachments or building closer relationship with agencies, seeing that they also get value for the work that they do. I mean, they come with raw passion to create the content that That's what made them stand out in the first place. But above and beyond that, they are learning about systems and processes from that. So I think it's a win-win situation. It's a win-win partnership from brands to influencer to agency. Everybody's getting something out of the relationship. And the thing is this, that 9.7 billion that globally influence marketing is worth could not have come about just from the clients just voting to. Somebody needed to build it. And that's where agencies be coming. And I mean, Nanaba let me cut a little check from her check, so we should all be able to, which is how they're supposed to be, right? Eat and let's eat.
Nana, I would like to know, I mean, you're one of the biggest influencers, 2.5 million, followers on Instagram alone, just your Instagram. Do you have an agency that manages you?
No, unfortunately, there's no agency.
Okay.
In the past, I've had an agency approach me that they want to work more with me because of my Instagram following. They think Instagram, especially to manage me there. I hesitate because I feel it will make me rigid. That's how I felt. Because don't come in and say, don't do this, don't do that. Don't like that rigidity. I just want to be myself on my page. I want to put whatever I want on pages. I think maybe if I had an agency managing me and my pages, probably it would be more professional. I guess it would be more professional. Probably I'll make more money because they know the more business they bring to me, the more commission they will get. I'll probably make more money. But I haven't really considered it. It came up just once and just brushed it off. I didn't go. But I think that I rather enjoy a relationship with the more. I have friends who work at agencies. Well, I think I want to do it that way. Unless Rudy is offering exciting, super exciting, and then I'll consider an agency probably managing the account. But I don't know. I've really not given it a thought. I've not. I'm good so far. I'm okay.
Thank you. So what about payment? So you don't mind following up on payments? Because Rudy can do that for you very well, and put the brand. He can put Samuel under pressure, and make sure that Samuel pays you. Or how does it work?
I don't. So when the agencies contact the brands contact directly and they give me a I really don't follow up much because I know they will definitely pay. Sometimes it takes a while, but I know they will pay. There was an instance in the World Cup in Brazil where an agent contacted me for a very big brand. They wanted me to do, because I'm a football fan, they wanted me to do about football for the brand. I did it, and it took them over a year to pay. And I totally forgot that they had paid me until one day I was going through my mails. I was looking for a particular email. Then I saw the contract and I remembered that, I haven't been paid for this. So I called the agency. They said, the guy who was handling that account had resigned. I don't know how that stopped from paying me. And it took a while. So there was a back and forth. Then I contacted the brand myself. And the brand said we had already paid the agency. And so deal with the agency. We're not interested in payment. And it went on for another 6 months. So one day I sent them a mail and said, okay, I'm going to put you on Twitter.
And then they paid. Let me guess, they paid immediately?
Yeah, a year and a half before they paid me. But I'm really not interested so much in the money. Yes, the money is very important. But I also think about brand affinity. It brings me a lot as well, because if they notice that I've done something with Guinness, then another brand will be interested in working with me, because Guinness is a credible, a reputable company. So it's not so much about the money. It's not so much about chasing the money. I know eventually they will pay me. So I don't necessarily need a Rudy to be following up on for me. Once the contract is signed, I know they will pay. They definitely pay. They always pay. Unless Rudy will follow up and then add more to it for me. And then I would want to go into a deal with Rudy on
you.